Good afternoon, Westwood, and welcome to the Wolverine Report. Evan Cardimino, Charlotte Lynch behind camera as usual, and Morgan Donahue. This is episode 4 of the Wolverine Report. Folks, we have a special guest. We have a Westwood High School alum, one of my classmates, good friend. We won some championships together, and someone who has won championships even beyond Westwood, some of the biggest in the world. In my opinion, the Stanley Cup, the hardest trophy to win in professional sports, that was just won by Mark Zarthar, the Chief Strategy Officer of the Florida Panthers, joining us today as the guest. Mark, how are you? Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thank you, Morgan. Thank you, Evan. I'm doing great. It's great to be on here. I've been following along on Instagram, so it's an honor to be on the other side of things. Look forward to catching up for a bit.
Absolutely. Well, we appreciate the support. Mark, just want to congratulate you personally. What an accomplishment. A lot of hard work. What an amazing team. You know, that type of hockey team, a gritty team, tough team, talented team. You had all of those together. You did some terrific things, in terms of sales, in terms of marketing, growing the experience around the team and building the interest around the team. How rewarding was this win for you? And where does this rank in terms of your professional accomplishments?
Yeah, so first of all, from a rewarding standpoint, my 99% of my role is focused on the business side of things as opposed to the hockey side. So despite, not being on the hockey side, it's still incredibly rewarding. We're a family here. Everyone from the GM down to the ticket taker feels like they're part of the family and part of the experience. So we're all thrilled. As you know, the NHL season, it's long, it's a grind. The playoffs in particular feels like it goes on forever. The field is super competitive. The parity in NHL, the 8 seed can win it in any given year. Mm-hmm. So to come out on top, especially after losing to Vegas the year before, felt great. Not just for me, but for the whole staff here, our families. My wife and I moved down here about 2 years ago, and the Panthers has been such a big part of our day-to-day lives, and so it was very rewarding. It's a great feeling for sure.
Heck yeah. And Florida's a unique team. It's a unique area. Really this year, and it started a little bit last year, you could see the fans were really coming out in forces. A lot of times in years past, it was that destination where it'd be perfect for the road team to come down and wear their colors. This last year was dominated by red and red, white, and orange. Now with the orange part of the logo. It's really cool to see some of the old school with the new school with the rats. And Craig Mellenby. And bringing that. Continuing to incorporate that. How special is it to see how the fans have come around that team in Florida? You see a lot of celebrities at the game. Brooks Koepka, very much interested. You see, Wayne Gretzky rooting for them and saying good words about that. It's a different team now. And what have you seen in your experience about how different that team is now versus what it was 10 years ago?
Yeah, I've only been here for 2 years, but done plenty of research looking back into the organization. And our current ownership group bought the team in 2013, but we actually date back all the way to 93. Many people still categorize us somewhat as like an expansion team, even though we've been around for 30 years. We're an older franchise in the Colorado Avalanche. So, that surprises many people. When our ownership group bought the team in 2013, in 2014, we had our second game of the season, was a home game, and we had less than 5,000 people in the building. And it looked like a Westwood High preseason game against Medway. And so we've come such a long way. Not only did we have very few fans in the building, but the type of, the roster and the way the team was built, it was mostly players at the tail ends of their career who were looking to sign, one more contract, finish their career in South Florida. It's a great place to live, obviously, and then go on their merry way into retirement. So we never had that like serious, structured approach that it takes to be a competitive hockey team. Our new GM, Bill Zito, came in a few years ago and really changed the culture here. Analytics are at the forefront of all their decision making. We have a much heightened focus on defense with our head coach, Paul Maurice. So that helped us transition to being a much more competitive team. You get a guy like Barkov, Kachuk, et cetera. So it's just a completely different team now where younger players, star players want to come to. And it's had a massive effect on our fan base. We're selling out almost every night. You walk down the street and people are wearing Panthers gear much more than they were 3 years ago. And some people like to criticize that, there's a bandwagon type of effect taking place. And you can call it what it is, but we're not going to be apologizing for having such a dramatic increase in our fandom. So yeah, it's changed almost overnight in terms of how popular the team has become.
Yeah, they can say anything, criticize the fandom and anything like that, but one thing they have to call you is Stanley Cup champs, and that's what matters most.
That's correct. Yes.
Yeah. So, Mark, before joining the Panthers, you were you were the SVP of marketing for the Flyers. What were some of the decisions you made there? What were some of the risks you took? And if you had to pick one of those risks that really, you're proud of, what would that be?
Yeah. So, before the Panthers, I was with the Philadelphia Flyers, which couldn't be more of a different type of franchise from a brand perspective, right? The Flyers are historically known for the Broad Street Bullies. They're not an original six team, but are essentially cut from the very similar cloth as those teams. And so with the team not as performing as well on the ice, we had a lot of challenges in terms of driving revenue, getting fans in the building. Gritty was obviously a big component of that. I wish I could stand here and say that I was responsible for Gritty, but I'm not. He was already a big deal before I arrived there. But one of the cool things we did was during the bubble, if you remember, we had no fans in the building. Which, by the way, if you were one of the 10 people in the arena, I was one of them. Amazing experience because you're watching professional hockey with 10 people in the building. You can hear everything on the ice. Like you can hear the guys talking to each other. Carter Hart had a puck go between his legs, and you could visibly or audibly hear him say, I can't say the word, but a loud curse word because he thought it was trickling behind him into the net. So that was an awesome experience. But aside from that, I think we built Gritty his own platform inside the arena. He was basically the only fan. We gave him a ball pit he was jumping into. I think he took off all his clothes and got painted like a French girl or whatever. So we had a lot of fun with him, which was cool. We did those reverse retro jerseys, if you can remember. We adjusted the Flyers reverse retro jersey. It was basically like all white with a little bit of black. So that was a pretty big risk considering that, it's one of those core original franchises. But it's funny coming down here to South Florida in terms of risk taking. We have way more wiggle room in terms of what we can do and how we can approach our business because we aren't, a traditional team. I work less on the creative side now. As our chief strategy officer, my day-to-day is more focused on strategy, analytics, things of that nature. Mm-hmm. Our CMO gets to be super creative, and it's a great environment to have that flexibility as opposed to like a Toronto or a Philly or a Boston, which is much more traditional sort of franchise.
I was going to say, yeah, you mentioned that Gritty in Philly. When I was talking to Morgan about this prior to talking to you, he told me about the Jumbotron in Fayetteville, and he mentioned your Natty Light partnerships and that you've always taken risks as you've gone throughout your career. So I was going to ask you, what are some of the risks you've been taking at the Panthers, and what are some of the things that you've kind of done differently here now that you have a little more flexibility since it's not one of those traditional six franchises?
Yeah, you know what? I'd like to say, me personally, I've taken a lot of like creative risks, but like I said, my role is much more based in analytics, strategy, et cetera. So my role isn't as fun and creative anymore, which I do miss that side of the business. But at the same time, for me personally, it's much more of a learning experience, understanding the nuances of our business, how we can maximize revenue, et cetera. So me personally, I don't have a lot of answers there. But, we have a tremendous CMO who gets to sort of like look to the future and change things and change how we approach our fan engagement.
So it sounds like now when it comes to risks, Mark, you use data. You're using data that help make your decisions. In the past, you used your gut. You have a great gut at making some of those risks. As Evan mentioned, let's walk through some of those. You after graduating from graduate, so first of all, you got your undergrad at Richmond, University of Richmond. You then got your MBA at Kellogg School of Management in Northeastern, one of the top in the country. And then you went to Anheuser-Busch. Did you start on the Bud Light side and then transition into Natural Light, or is it Natty Ice? Which Bud Light brand was that?
Yeah, I did. I started off as a brand manager for Bud Light, or an associate brand manager for Bud Light, then moved on to Natty Light. Was like the senior brand manager for all of the Natty Light brands, which frankly is, regardless of where my career takes me, I think that's always going to be the coolest job I ever had. If you want to talk about risk taking, that was probably one of the that was probably the top in terms of what I was able to do there, and what fun we had working on that brand.
Oh, I mean, as an outsider, Mark, I look at Natty Light was, a brand that, kind of everyone knew about, but it had a loyal base, right? There was, typically you'd grow some consumers here and there, but it really exploded under your leadership, because it got exciting. The color, to the can and the box was exciting. But then you even dipped into partnerships, partnered with Barstool and the RV that they had where they were traveling from college campus and whatnot. I don't know if it was for football or what, but I remember the RV. You additionally had NASCAR, huge sponsorship. I think you even had a car that had the logo on there. Smiley Kaufman partnership, perfect partnership. He was a young, exciting golfer on the PGA Tour. Partnering with him, athletes that can relate to all of those sports and that athlete, it really got Natty Light to a level that it had never been before. But what else? Partnerships or anything else did I miss there? Because those, as an outsider, ones I certainly remember and thought, were huge parts of the trajectory that you put it on.
Yeah, I mean, you touched on the big ones. I think it was basically Natty Light was just known as a cheap, watery beer. College kids would drink it. Sort of like working class adults would drink it as well, just to save money. But it had no real true brands. And so, once I was able to take over as a brand manager, the great thing about working on Natty Light was there was little red tape or little oversight. Like our CMO could care less about Natty Light. He was focused on the big brands, Ultra, yep. Bud Light, etc. So I had very little sort of overhead or oversight there. So, we did. One of the first things we did was sign Smiley Kaufman. We actually we basically identified our target consumer as young men, 21 to 25 from Southeastern United States. That was our core demo. And so we looked at their passion points, and they were country music, golf, college sports. And so when we went down the golf path, we wanted to partner with a young, like-minded golfer, right? Mm-hmm. Our short list included Smiley Kaufman, who had just finished. He was in the final pairing of the Masters, and he had a tough final round and didn't end up winning. And Justin Thomas was the other one that we had earmarked.
That's right.
Justin Thomas. So they were both at equal footing at the time. They were both young. But Justin Thomas's agent was from Excel, I think, and he wanted a whole bunch of money. Smiley Kaufman was like, we'll do it for 40 grand and just unlimited beer. Unlimited Natty Light. That's all he wanted. So we were like, oh, that's perfect.
Done.
And so we had very little budget. So it actually worked out. He posted a photo sitting on a throne of Natty cases that we sent him. And we thought Barstool would pick it up, or Total Frat Move, or one of those blogs, Yeah. Next thing you know, our PR team is calling me you have a long list of people that want to talk to you right now. Darren Ravel from ESPN, all these people. Yeah. I think we underestimated how the media would respond to it, because they viewed it as not just Natty Light and Smiley Kaufman. They viewed it as is the sport of golf evolving to be more, younger, cooler, etc. So I think the PGA Tour, Brian Monahan, this is or is it Brian or Jay Monahan, whatever his name is, that was on his radar, because I think there was pressure to make the game more appealing to younger people and evolve and stuff. And here we were. So that was sort of the start of a long road there. We partnered with Barstool Sports with the Natty Tailgate Tour, where they took this this RV from campus to campus. Our legal team, I remember, was all over me because it was just kind of chaotic without many rules going on down there. They're kind of like a free for all. So, anyways, it was a ton of fun, living in New York, working on that brand, and I kind of like kickstarted a few other things in my career.
Yeah. So Morgan, you mentioned to me.
I still have my Natty Light Smiley Kaufman golf visor right in my desk here. So
that is beautiful.
That's great. And then after Anheuser-Busch, you then went to the Fayetteville Woodpeckers. What kind of was a part of that decision to go to Fayetteville? And then what were some of the experiences there and some of the things you did there that you were most proud of? Can you walk us a little bit through the Jumbotron as well?
Yeah. So, I was living in New York City at the time. I was the global director of sports marketing for AB. So like really fun job, got to travel a lot, lived in the West Village. It's like really, great lifestyle there. And then, but I knew I wanted to work on the team side of sports. And this opportunity presented itself with the Houston Astros, who were relocating a minor league franchise from California to North Carolina. And so they were looking for a team president that not only would run the team, but they needed to build a brand new ballpark and start the front office, everything from the ground up. So I applied for that and ended up getting it. But, I was moving from Manhattan to Fayetteville, which is a military city. It's home to Fort Bragg in North Carolina, taking a pay cut. So you talk about risk earlier. That's probably the riskiest move of my career. And, it absolutely worked out. A lot of sleepless nights building a ballpark under tight timelines, had to hire a full-time staff, prepare for the actual baseball team to arrive and have all the right facilities for those guys. So such a big journey. We built this ballpark in the downtown. We had one of the largest, like you said, Jumbotrons in all of minor league baseball. We had this beautiful bar in right field. And it became this anchor of downtown urban development for the city of Fayetteville, which desperately needed it. You have all these soldiers. They have families, or they're young and single. They want to find somewhere to have fun. And we were the perfect place for that. It worked out really well. And it was a risk that was absolutely worth taking.
Yeah, you definitely took a risk too on doubling down on the fan experience. And we're really seeing teams now do that and making baseball quicker, a faster game, but really doubling down on fan experience. I know you did, fireworks and whatnot after games. And now you see teams like the Savannah Banners where it's, the fan experience is more important than the outcome of the game, where obviously you want to put the most competitive team on the field. At what point, what was the balance that you were trying to create where you want to create good fan experience, but you also want to put the best team possible out there on that field, because eventually they're going to be on the big squad, which I'm sure some did. And during your time there, they were World Series winners.
Yeah, it's a great question. The Savannah Bananas came up often in our front office. Like the Bananas did this, they did that. And we had to remember, though, that we had nothing against the Bananas. The experience there is great, but we had first round draft picks.
Yeah.
We had future major leaguers. I couldn't have Jeremy Pena, who is our starting shortstop and future World Series MVP, doing backflips, on his way down to first base. I don't think our GM would think too highly of that. So it was sort of a blend of bringing the ballpark to life, ensuring the fans had a great time. But we also, we worked for the Astros, and the number one priority was developing our players. So we had, brand new weight room, brand new batting cages, great facilities for those guys. There's often scrutiny about, living conditions for minor league players. We had all of our players were living in these brand new apartment buildings. So it was definitely a balance because, right, everyone's job in an organization is to win a championship. So we had to groom our players in the right setting. But at the same time, we still needed to earn a profit and bring fans into the ballpark. So, we had this right field bar that was the hottest place in town on Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays. We had the highest ratio of alcohol to food sales, which is largely due to being on a military city. People just wanted to have a good time. We'd have live music after the games out there. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Like minor league baseball is like the most pure form of sports, right? Especially for some of these smaller
Hmm.
towns in America. And from a professional standpoint, like there's no better way to learn how to work in team sports than starting in minor league baseball because you have a small staff and everyone has to like do a little bit of everything to get by. So for me, it worked out tremendously.
You had quite the big jump after Fayetteville. You went to the Philadelphia Flyers. How hard of it was a decision to leave Fayetteville for Philadelphia for you?
Yeah, I mean, the hardest part was leaving the staff that I had built and worked with because you spend so much time at the ballpark, you almost become like a family, and those were the friends that I had, when we weren't at work as well. So leaving them to go up north was tough, but ultimately wanted to work for the major league club, and Philadelphia presented that opportunity. And you know, while I love the game of baseball, hockey is the best. Like there's nothing better. I know Morgan can agree with me there. Um, so, while it was like tough to leave behind what we had built in Fayetteville, like it was definitely an opportunity I couldn't pass up.
So, Mark, before coming to Westwood High School, you did your freshman year, and I think you might have been middle school at St. Sebastian's. And that's a tough decision. Had a lot of friends there. But ultimately, you made the move to Westwood. What was behind that decision? I mean, St. Sebastian's, a historic, a winning program, great athletics. Westwood, too, was it because you wanted to, join the Westwood Athletics playing with your friends and colleagues, or what was kind of behind that decision?
Yeah, it's funny. I was at Stubbs. If you remember, Ryan Murphy was there with me as well.
Yeah.
Um, when I was a freshman at St. Seb's, we had, I think our senior class, we had five players drafted into the NHL out of high school.
Yeah.
Brian Boyle, was I think a couple grades above me. Basically, if you weren't a BC BU commit, like you weren't going to be playing on varsity at that time at Seb. So for me, as a freshman, I was also watching the Westwood hockey team uh, win the state championship. Seeing you guys as freshmen, my brother as a sophomore as the goaltender, and I was on the freshman team at St. Seb's, and you guys are winning states. And I was like, I remember telling my parents, like, I really want to go back and play and like be a part of that. Like, there was sort of the envy. I went to every single one of your games. The crowd was packed. Like when you guys beat Blue Hills, that was incredible.
Yeah.
That was actually the driving force behind me going back to Westwood. I was like, I wanted to be a part of that. And so obviously we grew up with all you guys, and not being there for those moments was tough. So that was the driving force to go back, and it was obviously the right decision.
Absolutely. And we're glad you did, because not long after, 1 year into your Westwood career, you won your first Super Bowl at Westwood. We both were the cornerbacks, the dynamic secondary that we had at Westwood. Joe Fabiano as the safety. How special was that experience, winning that first Super Bowl against Tingsboro, and I believe the game was at Chelsea. How rewarding was that, knowing you made this tough decision to come to leaving a great sports school, but winning a Super Bowl with some of your best friends, top of the division, top of the league, and then going back to back as well the following year? How special were those years for you?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think there's nothing that compares to it in terms of, you can go to a boarding school, prep school, whatever, and you're winning a championship, but nothing really compares to doing it with the guys that you were in kindergarten with, right? And you were raised your whole entire life with. Um, that was both football and hockey, right? So it was absolutely special. I mean, little known stat, I don't know if you remember this, Morgan, but when we were juniors, we went 3 straight games without giving up a single reception. Did you know that?
I knew there was something along. No one would pass though, too. People would watch the film and they realize, don't pass. These are ball hawks. They not only are they going to cover our receivers pretty good, that ball's going the other way and probably for a touchdown.
More likely Fabiano than me, but still, yes, it was going to go the other way for sure. But yeah, I mean, that was the best. I mean, hockey as well. Obviously, I wasn't there when we won states as freshmen, but sophomore year we made a run. So yeah, I wouldn't trade it for the world. It was awesome.
And Mark, senior year, you transitioned to more of like that outside linebacker role. You are a terrific tackler, one of the best tacklers on the team. And I believe it was at Medfield where you tore your ACL. Tough game, and it was tough losing you because you were a big part of the team. Doctor basically tells you, Mark, it's been a great career, but let's get you healthy. Let's get you surgery. We'll move on, and we want to make sure your knee is healthy for the rest of your life. You let probably 3 or 4 games go. We got into the playoffs, I believe, and you said, I'm going to give this a shot. Basically, what you learned is you can't really tear a torn ACL. You found a way to get on that field. You played in the playoffs and the state championship. Walk us through that experience. What a remarkable accomplishment, and it really pumped us teammates up as well.
Yeah, that was senior year. It was like midway through senior year. We played Medfield at home. It was rainy. I think they also had the Red Sox 04 parade was that day.
Yep.
So we had the crowd wasn't very large either. So it was just a brutal game. We lost.
Yeah.
I tore my ACL midway through the game, which was devastating. Not because we were projected to make the playoffs and potentially repeat in the Super Bowl, but even worse, it eliminated my entire senior year hockey season, which was devastating. And I didn't have plans to play in college really, so it was the end of it all. So I was obviously devastated, and so watching the team play, we went into the Thanksgiving game that week, and we weren't supposed to make the playoffs. If you remember, we needed to beat Holliston, and then a couple other teams needed to lose. So a few dominoes needed to fall. So by all expectations, that was the last game for us, was that Thanksgiving game. So the doctor was I asked him about it, and he said, you can't tear any worse. He's like, you won't be, I don't know how effective you'll be, but you can go out there with a brace on. So I got the brace. I remember talking to Paul Lilla. Is he still there, by the way?
He is. He sure is.
It's awesome.
He looks the same, the exact same too, Mark.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah. So I remember I asked Paul, hey, doctor said it's okay if I play. This is a Varsity Blues, Friday Night Lights type moment, right? And I was can I play? It's the last competitive game of my entire life. And all my buddies are out there. And he was like, absolutely not. Are you crazy? I think he was thinking liability and everything. Yeah. He said, listen, if we win and we find a way into the playoffs, I'll let you play in the playoffs. And I was like, deal. And hugged it out. And then we end up winning, and Medfield loses and Hopkinton loses, or whoever needed to lose. And so we go into that playoffs against Cohasset. I think the only real way I could play was if I played nose tackle, because I had no side-to-side movement really. So Hallian had me play nose tackle, and then I think I had a tackle for loss against Cohasset in a few plays, and I took myself out because I wanted to save myself for the Super Bowl because I knew I could get blown out at any minute. Played I think 2 series in the Super Bowl, and then my knee buckled and I was in screaming in pain, and that was it. But those 2 series was, for me, it was everything, because I didn't want my career to end with everybody and all my teammates by losing in that game in Medfield and tearing my ACL. So just being out there for a few series was incredible, and obviously we won again. And yeah, that was it.
You know what, it meant everything to us, Mark, to see you going out there in pain. I specifically remember you being on the ground and yelling in pain. And it was a couple times. It would happen a couple times each game, and you were up at the nose guard. You would sneak right through the A gap, and you'd be making plays in the backfield on a torn ACL. The Thanksgiving game you're mentioning, we 100%. We had to win the game to even have a chance. Medfield lost to Dover Sherborne on the last play of the game. I think Medfield was going for 2. Oh no, excuse me. Dover Sherborne was going for the win by going for 2. Andrew Dare, their quarterback, threw a touchdown pass. They win the game. Carl Fogel gets a phone call on the field confirming that Medfield lost. Westwood's in the playoffs. And we'll never forget, I got a picture of it. We'll put it up on the screen of everyone on the field. I see you there you're on the field with crutches. But what a remarkable teammate you were, to just put the team first, whatever you could do to make us better, and you did on one foot. And what a memory to go down as not only a champion, that's a Gregory Campbell type moment for you.
Well, let's not forget Morgan had that big interception there, almost pick six.
Yeah,
he returned it like 80 yards.
I got tracked down by the DN, believe it or not. I think it was like the 5-yard line. But you know what? It was a fun game and some of the best memories, of my life, and I know your life. Westwood sports today is a lot different than it was when we were in Westwood High School. Now you can watch games, on YouTube, and obviously we want to get into some live games. It did some live games. Evan did some live games last year. How much tabs do you keep on Westwood sports this year? Last year, excuse me. How much tabs do you keep on the Westwood sports over the last couple of years? And what particular sports do you follow along? I know obviously the streak in hockey is something you probably keep an eye on, but what are some of the things that have your attention?
Yeah, no, I definitely follow. It's great work that you guys are doing. The other areas on social media that the athletic department's doing, because it gives people like us who are obviously much older, especially people like me who are far away, the chance to keep tabs on everything. And I absolutely still follow, hockey for sure with Seabit as the coach. I mean, that's awesome seeing one of our teammates lead the team there. And I think, is Ferrari still coaching as well?
Ferrari is still coaching, yep. St. Seb's, one of your Seb's guys.
Yeah, so it's nice to know the coaching staff, right? Which is It feels crazy that those are the guys that are coaching. But so obviously follow the hockey team, follow the football team as well. So I obviously keep tabs, and then it's nice the girls lacrosse program, always see them in the headlines still winning like they used to. So no, I love it. I follow all the accounts on Instagram and everything, and get fired up when I see us, taking down our rivals. What's interesting to me though is like when we were in high school, we played the surrounding towns that were smaller size, like Westwood was, and today I see us facing these teams that historically were like much bigger than us in size, and by size I mean like school size.
Yeah,
is like Westwood a bigger town now? Like we're facing these much bigger places, right?
It's a combination of, I think, towns getting smaller. Westwood's somewhat still the same. It's about just over 16,000 and change. But other teams like Dedham and Norwood have joined the TVL since and they used to be Division One. Westwood's also getting super competitive in sports. So Westwood boys lacrosse, for example, they played a game this year versus Catholic Memorial, Division One team, a top 15 team in the state. And Westwood is really on that doorstep when you look at the athletics and the competition and their talent levels. Their talent levels are right there. And the girls lacrosse have always been girls lacrosse. It's no different than we were there. They were Division One 23 years ago, or 22 years ago. They've always been unbelievably competitive. But Westwood sports is just becoming, they're right up there with the D1 teams, and they're always going to be in the top 10, top 15 of D2. And they are not afraid to schedule those games because they compete in it, where we never really played Norwood in any sports. Walpole would be, okay, see our best effort. They're pretty darn good. Now those are not only regularly scheduled games, Westwood competes in them and they're winning those games too. So it is a different, I would say, era in sports. I think the club component too, all these kids are playing so many games outside of just town league that are making them, their skills so sharp, super competitive. So I think a lot of those kind of factor in to Westwood and the competition they're in, and playing some of those teams that when we looked at it 20 years ago, we'd say, wow, those are teams that are going to vie for the Division I state championship, and Westwood's going out and beating them now.
And the facilities are so much better. Like, remember that field we practiced on behind the high school for football? There was literally more rocks than there was grass.
It's the multi-purpose field. So, Mark, that field is still there, but it has turf now, and they have a field goal post there too. And the girls field hockey plays, I think, most of their home games there. We see a bunch of lacrosse games, sometimes boys and girls. Typically when the track and field's going on, they'll play the lacrosse games there. You wouldn't even recognize it. I mean, that was the place where we grew up playing 6-on-6 soccer, growing up. And now turf field, it's amazing. It's got that nice wooded backdrop too, where Coach Hallian would go into the woods and you didn't know where the heck he was going and comes back 5 minutes later. It's a lot different place now than it was, and amazing resources here at Westwood.
Evan, when we would practice field goals, so I think Chris Lahan was our kicker. We would have the 2 tallest players on the team stand and form field goal posts. And so we have the kid, and this wasn't like a joke. This was us legitimately practicing. So it's funny when I see the clips online and stuff of like the beautiful stadium, which has been around for a while, but just so much different and better than what we had. I think,
Mark,
I think you guys
talk them
posted
through our
a video
home,
of like.
I was gonna say, talk them through our home field that we had in our football careers. Do you remember that?
The home field?
Our home football field during our time at Westwood?
Yeah, Severian.
So we had a couple. I mean, at one point, we were playing home games in Norwood, played like Bellingham. We then once had a home game.
That was our sophomore year. Yeah.
Yes. Then we had a home game versus Medfield. And then Zavarian was nice enough where we would play on Saturdays at 10 a.m. before their games. And this is while they were constructing Flay Hive Field. So I think, and we didn't have a locker room or anything like that. So it was a completely different time. But I think it was stuff that we really rallied, not having any of these, things around us where we just wanted to play football. We just want to go out there and play, tell us when and where we'll be there. And we want to compete.
I mean, that's a great mentality to have. You guys won some Super Bowls out of it. I mean, I like that. Going out and making your own field goal post. I get that. When I played football as a kid, I did kick a little bit, funny enough. And I found some wood planks that my dad had he used to cut up because he's a carpenter. And we took it out, and him and I put it together, and we made a fake field goal post, and I'd go out and practice. But if I was smart, I would have done the people like you guys did. I would have done some of my buddies.
Well, it was funny because, a lot of times coaches would be like, if you end on a good one here, we're done. So we'd have 2 of the tallest players, and sometimes it'd be close to one of the bars, so you'd see it moving over almost like Little Giants. You see that scene in Little Giants, they're moving over just to make sure it goes in there so we don't have to do any extra sprints. But it was a remarkable time, and I'll certainly remember those memories the rest of my life. Mark, one thing I want to say is, coming from Westwood and to be at the top of your industry, the top of your game, and to be successful as a winner, it's really inspiring for a lot of people, myself included. And there's students at Westwood that are athletes, and there's students that eventually want to get into sports, whether it's covering it, whether it's media, whether it's administrative, marketing. There's so many different avenues for that. What type of advice would you give for any Westwood High School students that want to get into sports? What are things they can do today, in high school, or even, what majors in college can they involve themselves in to really put their best foot forward to make a career in sports like you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Historically, it was typical to be an executive with a sports team meant that you started your career in a junior level position with a sports team and you worked your way up. So you could start by selling tickets and move into corporate partnerships and eventually make your way into a executive level role. Mm-hmm. That is still obviously a path, but it's now more common for CEOs, other executives to welcome people from other industries into a professional sports situation. So, I was a good example. I worked in the beer industry in marketing and sports marketing, and that kind of allowed me to sharpen a certain skill, which then could be applied to professional sports. And so my advice would be just because you don't land on your dream job right out of college, if you can find a job that's going to allow you to become a functional expert in something, whether it's, digital marketing, whether it's sales, whether it's working in data or strategy or insights, et cetera, you can go do that with a CPG company, a tech company, et cetera, become an expert. Plenty of sports executives are going to want to hire you so that you can bring those talents to the team side. So my advice would be, just working on something that's going to make you a really talented and like I said, functional expert. Mm-hmm. So if you have a job with, a tech firm in Boston and you're selling or you're marketing, you can translate that to the sports world. Just because you don't start your career in sports doesn't mean you can't make your way over.
Yeah, we talk about this a lot off camera, you and I, that there are so many opportunities for high school students and college students where there are so many fields, video. My background is sports video. That is always what I've loved to do. But there's trainers, there's equipment department. What are some of the fields that right now, that as someone who's in the sports industry, you look at and you say that's kind of the biggest need for employment, and maybe some fields you would steer, high school kids or college graduates to?
Yeah, I think that evolves, right? But I think at the moment, to me, something that stands out is anyone who has experience working with large sets of data, essentially whether it's, extracting data, manipulating that data to uncover various insights to help support your sales team, your marketing team, et cetera. In the sports world, it's something that, we've evolved a bit, but we're still well behind other industries in how they collect data and then use that data. So I think some form of analytical background is absolutely a skill and experience that team sports are leveraging or are valuing, right, in terms of up and coming talent. Specifically in Boston, you look at the Patriots; they have their own craft analytics group, which is considered, one of the best in the industry. So they're one of the most informed organizations that exists. The Red Sox hire plenty of people from MIT because they value those types of skills. So you're seeing that become more and more common. So I think, just because you didn't go to MIT doesn't mean you can't learn those skills and you can't apply them to a sports team.
For sure, for sure. I want to talk about leadership, as we wrapping up here. Leadership, in my opinion, is a skill. You can always invest and continue to become a better leader, learning how to understand, different things about yourself and how to motivate your team and how to all come together for the same goal. And a lot of that starts in our development, especially in high school. It's some of the most important developmental years of our life. We're kind of figuring ourselves out, confidence, we're building that. We don't know if we can get into certain schools. We do, and we feel great. And then we go on to some really important years of our life after that. At Westwood High School, who were some of the most influential coaches, teachers, any administrative workers that you can remember offhand that were, impactful in your life and developing you as a leader?
Yeah, I was a pretty decent student, but I can't, like, off the top of my head remember any teachers being overly influential in my life. As grateful as I am for all the teachers we had in school, I think to me the biggest lasting impact was from our coaches.
Sure.
The first ones that come to mind are Coach Hallion,
Yeah.
Coach Welby, Coach
Yep.
Whalen.
Yep.
All three very different people, but like Coach Hallion was this sort of like, crazy intelligent wizard type of mind.
Yeah.
Welby was also very unique in the sense of like balancing being really tough on us with also being like a mentor and a friend as well. Like one practice he's like Herb Brooks, but then the next day he's like one of the guys. So I thought that was always interesting. And then Whalen coaching us in both hockey and baseball. I think he was a great balancing act with the toughness of Welby, kind of like a player's coach in that regard, and somebody who I always looked up to. So, but I can't not give a shout out to your dad back when we were termites or peewees. Running us up and down that gymnasium at Deerfield School, stick handling drill, yelling at you and Charlie for fighting all the time.
Kicking his kids off the ice. Ref, can I kick my son out of the game? Coach, you can do whatever you want. All right, you're out of here.
I remember that.
Some great memories.
Yeah, that was great. And then Dan Nally would win the back checking award every single game.
Julie Flynn, her father, or it might have been, I think her father had seen my father at Roach Brothers, which happens. Everyone runs into everyone at Roach Brothers here in town. They were moving out of their old house, and one of the things that he saw in her room that she kept all these years was all these back checker awards. So my dad had put a big smile on his face because he's like, this is amazing, because back checking is no different than, lacrosse or any other sport. It's getting back to play defense when you're an offensive player. And it's kind of, not everyone does it. You're exerting more effort. but it's so integral, and it was something Coach Donahue, my father, was definitely a big component of. And it's funny that you remember that, Mark.
It's never been an official statistic unless you're the Donahue family. Then it was an official, like, marked statistic.
It was.
So
It was.
appreciated that.
Well, I got one last question for you, Mark. My man Evan over here, he lives in Medford. We understand there's some really cool and big things happening in Medford. I think it's coming up this year. A beer hall that you were opening with your brother, Brian Zarthar, also a Westwood legend, MVP of the Westwood High School Boys State Championship hockey team in 2001. What can you tell us about this project and any details you have?
Yeah, so really exciting. My brother, this is his sort of vision. Our extended family, we've owned property in Medford, Everett, Chelsea area since the early 1960s. Our grandparents and my brother had this vision of bringing a beer hall to the area. For those who are familiar with Medford, like Evan is, very densely populated area. Over the last 10, 15 years, it's been a total boom with people wanting to move there, especially people getting priced out of the city and the entire greater Boston area just blowing up. But the city historically has never had a vast array of dining and entertainment options, and many Medford residents are forced to leave and go to these other locations, whether Somerville, Cambridge, etc. So my brother had this genius idea of like, well, why don't we make this sort of like adult playground right in the center of Medford on Mystic Avenue? Mm-hmm. It's 20,000 foot beer hall, which will have 30 or so New England style craft beers on tap. We'll have our in-house restaurant called The Lantern. So the beer hall is called the Great American Beer Hall. The restaurant within it will be called The Lantern, named after Paul Revere's ride through Medford. Yeah. We'll have 2 oversized LED screens. They're like the size of a football field, basically, up on the wall. Live music. We'll have a roof deck, an outdoor patio, sort of like a Swiss Army knife, whether you want to go there to watch the game, whether you want to go there to sample craft beer, try the pizza, listen to live music. So yeah, it's like, hopefully it's Evan's little playground in a couple months.
Yeah, I was going to say, I will be there when it opens, because I totally get where you're coming from when you say Medford, it has had this boom and there's not a lot. My current local brewery I go to is in Woburn. So, I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to check it out. The LED screens sound great. This sounds great. I'm glad you're bringing it to Medford, and I'm looking forward to it.
Do we get Evan a friends and family discount, Mark? What can we hook him up with over there?
Just say you're with Brian Zarthar, and they'll run it on his credit card, and you'll be good to go.
Okay, good to know. I will make a note.
But we'll be open. We're targeting mid to late August, so just in time for football season, which would be great.
Perfect.
And just in time for a lot of people coming back from the Cape and vacation, whatever else.
Well, maybe we do a podcast there, a future podcast with Westwood High alum Brian Zarthar. Maybe we talk a little hockey. We'll see. But Mark, thank you so much for coming on, man. Really proud of everything you've done. You make me proud, being from Westwood, seeing you taking risks, not being afraid, and winning the biggest trophy in sports. All I ask is next year, can you potentially take it easier on my Bruins? Very, very tough to see them lose, especially in overtime. That I think it was a Verhaeghe goal last year. That was a tough one to get over. But regardless, really appreciate you hopping on. Best of luck in the upcoming season, and enjoy the continued celebration of winning the Stanley Cup, the best trophy in all of sports.
We never covered off on the Bruins topic, but
yes,
yeah, I still root for the Bruins. We're not playing them; it's tough. Good. But we actually, Sean Thornton is our chief revenue officer with the Panthers.
Yeah,
and Gregory Campbell's our assistant general manager.
Yep.
So we're just missing Daniel Paille, and we have the full Merlot line here. Yeah. But Sean's office is actually connected to mine. Hold on one second. He's on a call. I wanted him to pop in, but
no worries.
It's fun walking around Boston when you're with Sean. You're treated like a star. I was like the picture man for like plenty of fans that were rolling up and asking for a selfie with him. So
I've heard the Charlestown bar scene, especially Ironside. I think his Ironside is a favorite of his, and Tuca is one of his wingmen, in the Charlestown area. But you do see Sean tell us, thank you so much for a cup. Some of the best years of my life. We're watching that 2011 team, and some of the chirps he did along the way. So funny. But again, Mark, thank you so much for coming on. Best of luck this upcoming season, and hopefully, if we see you in the area, love to see you at some of the games, and some future podcasts as well.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it, guys, and good luck. Love what you guys are doing. I'll be following along. I try not to chirp too hard in the comment section, but at least I'll keep it professional.
Well, thanks again, Mark. Everyone, appreciate you tuning in and looking forward to the next one.
See you guys. Thank you.